What's up, everybody? We are AAPI in gaming, and we are in AAPI Heritage Month, and we thought it would be a great idea to continue talking to various people in the industry. I am very excited to talk to Bradley Shankar from MobileSyrup.com. He is somebody that I've been looking to network with for quite a while, being a journalist myself. So there'll be a lot of things that we'll be piggybacking back on. But yeah, Brad, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Brad Shankar. I'm a gaming journalist at MobileSyrup, a Toronto-based publication that covers all kinds of technology. We're kind of Canada's only major tech publication, really. So it kind of feels like a cheat to say we're Canada's biggest because we're also kind of the only one. But yeah, I've been here for 8 years now, and we cover a little bit of everything. As the name suggests, we started off covering smartphones, kind of in the BlackBerry era. But in recent years, we've pivoted to doing all kinds of technology. So I mostly do games. I kind of focus on Canadian games when possible because it is a really large market. It's the third
Yeah.
largest in the world for game development, but not a lot of people really know that, and so I try to support that. But I cover all kinds of games as well. Final Fantasy is my favorite series, so
I have that shirt too. I almost wore that one.
nice, a man of
Yeah.
taste.
Hmm.
So I cover video games, streaming services. We're a small team. We're only 4 people at the moment. We lost a
Okay.
few people last year, sadly, so we're kind of all hands on deck, kind of doing everything, a bit of everything. But yeah, games are still my main beat, and that's what I
Okay.
love to do.
Did you lose them as a result of the economy and the difficulties, or what happened there?
Yeah, it was yeah, unfortunately the old company that we were with, they didn't really know what to do with us. So they were more of like a media production company, so they didn't really have any kind of like news outlets or publications, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
they didn't really know what to do with us, and then unfortunately they just then we had to lay off 2 people, and then our editor, who I've known since I started here, ended up leaving as well. So it's just been the 4 of us since then. And then while we were kind of mourning all of those losses, we got bought by another company. So it was
Oh,
a kind of a really hectic change. And this was all during like Summer Game Fest time too, which is like I was
oh,
just trying to plan that and
okay.
worry about that. So it was a little hectic, but I mean it's
Yeah.
been a year now almost, so we've kind of settled in, I would say.
I'm sure you've seen we're going through a lot of hecticness now with again Summer Game Fest and everything going on. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but before we do that, like, how did you get into journalism or games journalism?
So I was in high school, and whenever I had a spare in my schedule, I would go right next door. There's like a public library there, and
Oh,
they'd have a bunch of video game magazines back when that was still like a big thing. And they had official Xbox magazine, RIP. I really liked that, and I was reading it, and there was a section on like how to break into the gaming industry, and it was like people from different positions, like narrative, art, programming, etc., kind of talking about their backgrounds, and everyone who was from the writing side said they went into journalism, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I hadn't really thought of journalism, but English and writing, those subjects are what I'm stronger at. I'm terrible at math and science, but that kind of the creative side of things I'm a little better at. So I'm like, why not go for that? So I applied to. It used to be called Ryerson University. Now it's the Toronto Metropolitan University, which is one of the best schools in Canada for journalism. And thankfully I was able to get in. So I did that for 4 years, and then in the final year you have to do an internship. So I was able to get one at MobileSyrup, and then I just got hired through that. So I was really
awesome.
fortunate. It helped a lot because the editor that I said who left last year, he same thing. He went to the same university I did, also loved covering games, so we kind of hit it off really early on, and I think that really helped kind of get me in the door and settled.
Okay, so was this your first job out of college?
Yeah,
That's awesome, man. Yeah,
so I know I'm very lucky in that sense. Yeah, I don't take it for
Canadian
granted.
dream. American dream does not exist. But yeah. Anyway, so talk about what your typical day is like when you're at Mobile Syrup.
Yeah, it's a little more hectic now just because we have a smaller team and people are kind of coming in and going depending on events and stuff. But generally, I'll sign on in the morning, and we have like I don't know if you're familiar with it, Trello.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, it's kind of like it's like a tool you can use to kind of create cards and organize them. So sometimes game developers will use them to show like their roadmap for upcoming content updates, so
Mhm.
fans can kind of see, oh, and then they'll put like, oh, here's a bug that I'm working on, and this developer is working on it right now. For us, we kind of use that for news stories. So like we'll have in the morning, we'll look at what the news stories are and kind of add them to Trello, and then we'll sort of be assigned by the editor to the to each story, and then we'll write those as we go, uh, and then obviously continue to add stories throughout the day because obviously things can break at any time, and you never know when stuff will come
Exactly.
up. So sometimes some things take priority over others, and we try to still not as much as we used to be able to do, but we still try to do a lot of features. So we get allotted feature time generally when it's not a super busy week, so we can work on interviews and stuff. Because that's my favorite thing to do is interviewing developers and letting them tell their own stories.
Oh,
I
yeah,
like that.
absolutely.
I like
Yeah.
a lot of aspects of the job, but that's definitely my favorite part. So when I get the time to do that, which is uh, not as often as I would like, but still I try to do it as often as possible. That's what I enjoy the most.
No, that's interesting. I use Trello a lot when I was a community manager, mainly as a way to, you know, keep a bird's eye view of all the content that I've had planned, especially with social media, right? You want to make sure that some things go on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever it may be. And not only that, but I worked on a game that was licensed by Major League Baseball. So a lot of our
Mm,
stuff had to be approved 2 weeks ahead of time. And
right.
I don't know if you're a sports fan, that doesn't work because things can happen right then and there. I'm a huge NFL fan, and Brock Purdy signed a $265 million contract, and I'm sure that the Bay Area is going to go crazy right now about that. So yeah, sports doesn't stop. So it was all about just finding different kinds of processes. But yeah, it's interesting hearing how it's used from a journalistic or content management point of view. So yeah, it's cool and just it's cool hearing about your day. Tell us about do you have any tips or insight on how to break into the industry, whether it be through journalism or in video games?
Yeah, that's a tricky one because, I like I said, I was very fortunate. I know my situation is not like a lot of other people, so I don't want to claim like I had to. Obviously, I did put in a lot of work, but I didn't necessarily have to like, apply to a bunch of sites and do a lot of interviews, and I didn't have to experience that kind of hustle. So,
Mhm.
but I think in a general sense, and I think what a lot of other people tell you is just write. Like if that's what you want to do, it's great to have your name on a masthead and a portfolio in something. So whether that's writing, freelance stories, or even for me, like I was encouraged, and I'm glad I was, to write for the campus paper.
Yeah.
Contribute stories to that. That's a great way to sort of, dip your foot in it and get your foot in the door and kind of get a little of experience from that, and maybe even kind of network and develop some opportunities that way. And yeah, networking as well is a big thing, of course. I think wherever you are, if there's local game jams or local game meetups, like in Toronto where I am, for instance, there's loads of events that you can go to that are just small sort of grassroots things. Like they don't cost any money.
Yeah.
You can just go and meet up with people, and sometimes they have events where developers actually talk about like their experiences of making games. So it's more of like a Q&A sort of thing, and other times it's more just an informal, you can just have a pint and talk with some other developers, and sometimes they have people from like EA and whatnot there. So
Mhm.
depending on where you are, I would definitely recommend looking into stuff like that. And even I think the great thing about this online age that we're in is that you can still network with people without even having to meet them, because obviously cost is a big factor if you can't get to a city or a country where things are going on. The Discord is a great way to connect with people. Blue Sky, there's a lot of great stuff on there. Even in Blue Sky, a lot of people will create like follower packs. They'll be like, to link it back to AAPI. They'll be like, oh, here's a bunch of AAPI creators that you can follow, or here's a bunch of, Black developers that you can follow, or Bay Area developers, or anything like that. There's a bunch of packs like that that you can just see who to follow, and that's a great way to, network with people and build some connections and get your foot in without, again, having to spend a lot of money to travel somewhere.
Mhm. So for your college paper, did you do a whole lot of gaming content or anything at all?
Not really gaming specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, in that situation, you were open to pitch stories, but generally it was like if they had a story that they wanted covered, you would kind of get assigned to it. So the closest one that I did that was tech related was like someone on campus had created something kind of like a mobile AR game, but for wheelchairs, so people could kind of play a game with that, which was really cool. But yeah, otherwise it was just kind of whatever stories there were. So I didn't really get to do a whole lot of tech from that side of things. But I think something that really helped with my job was my first real job, not just in general, not journalism related, was at Future Shop, which was the Canadian version of Best Buy.
Hmm.
And Best Buy actually bought Future Shop after a certain point. But so I was working there for a number of years. So that's where and then when Future Shop shut down, I moved over to Best Buy. So I basically had 5 years of retail experience. And I think that really helped me in a lot of ways because journalism is all about, kind of telling a story in the most sort of concise and clear way possible, like to inform people. And you don't want to necessarily inundate them with big tech jargon or inside baseball sort of stuff. You're trying to make it as approachable as possible, and I think working in retail really helped with that because I was able to, this is the average person who's walking into the store. They don't necessarily know what 4 teraflops of power is for the Xbox Series X or Xbox One X or whatever. They kind of just want the Xbox One S because it's a $300 device that plays Minecraft, right? Like a lot of people would buy that, so that kind of gave me a really good perspective of what people sort of know and are interested in, and how to sort of talk to them in a way that's informative but not necessarily unimpeachable, basically
Yeah, yeah.
unapproachable. Yeah.
You mentioned you're part of a small staff, so I imagine like you're the gaming guru of MobileSyrup. Would that be the right assumption, or?
Yeah. Last year we had a few more people who would do that sort of stuff, but yeah, now it's pretty much just me. So a lot of the stuff I'm kind of taking on my own. So uh,
Gotcha.
yeah.
All right. So that being said, you've been there quite a while now. You just mentioned that one of your favorite things to do is interview devs or people in the industry, just because it's great hearing their stories. So, do you have any memorable ones that you can share, or if not interviews, maybe events?
Yeah, no, definitely. I've been fortunate to do a lot of interviews, and I think with COVID especially, that really opened up companies to allowing virtual interviews. So a lot of opportunities came out that way. Like the big one for me, again, to the COVID point, I got to interview Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, which is, again, my favorite series.
Hmm.
That was in 2021 for Fantasian, his new Apple Arcade game at the time. It's since
Yeah, yeah,
come to, last year it came to all platforms, thankfully, because it was stranded on Apple devices, and that was a real shame.
yeah.
So
I've
it's
only
nice
put
that it,
2 minutes into that one. I got to put more into
yeah,
it.
yeah, so I got to do a virtual call with him from Hawaii, so that was amazing. And then last year I got to in person right before the Game Awards interview Yoshinori Kitase, the director of Final Fantasy 6, 7, and
Yes.
Chrono Trigger, and
Yes.
the producer of the Rebirth games, and Naoki Hamaguchi, the director of the remake games as well. And I got to do them together, and yeah, just that was surreal. It's like this guy basically made my childhood here. It's like and then we got to actually have dinner with him afterwards, which was
That's awesome.
amazing. So that was a very kind of close, intimate sort of conversation, and that was something I'll forever cherish. And then kind of for me again, kind of bringing it back to the Canadian side of things. And 2 years ago, I did for the 20th anniversary of Knights of the Old Republic, I did a 20,000 word feature on Knights of the Old Republic
All right.
with the developers who worked at BioWare, so a bunch of them. So it was like a 2-part 20,000 word thing, kind of looking back on the legacy of that game and everything. So that was a cool thing because it's what I really love about talking to developers, regardless of who they are, is they're passionate, right? Like they're artists. They just
Mhm.
want to make something that people will love. It's usually obviously the publishers are more worried about the money side of things, but the developers, they're passionate, so they speak from the heart and they give you a lot of great answers generally, and they just want to talk and are really enthusiastic. Like when you talk to someone who like a politician or an executive, they're just so it's such robotic canned responses, and you're never really going to get anything out of them. So
Yeah.
I tend to not enjoy doing those, but with games, it's like, yeah, I can just, you poured your heart a lot in a lot of cases, especially if it's an indie developer. It's like, you poured literally everything on the line to make this game, and I feel really honored in being able to help them tell their story.
Have there been any cases where like you caught them saying something they shouldn't have, or anything that
Yeah,
you
sometimes. I mean, I think that's more so on the AAA side, just because the stakeholders will have an issue with what they say or whatever. If they're sitting in on the call, they might jump in and say, oh, off the record for that one, or strike that from the record, that sort of thing. But
Gotcha.
uh, I think that's again another thing that's nice about talking with indie developers is they're not really beholden to that sort of thing. So
No, it's funny. The reason why I brought that up was I'm sure you saw it last week. Apparently, Yuji Horii, creator and developer of the
yeah,
Dragon Quest series, said something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, they're totally working on a remake for Chrono Trigger," and we don't know if that's the case. Probably is, probably isn't. But the reason why I brought that up was because my first interview with a developer was actually with Yuji Horii when he
no
did the
way.
tour for when he did the tour for Dragon Quest 11.
That's
And
awesome.
one of my questions was like, all right, like this is on PS4. Like, do you have any plans of doing a Switch version anytime soon? And then immediately the interpreter was like, there will be no comments about the Nintendo Switch at this time. And then like a few months later, they end up getting the best version. So yeah, it totally makes sense. But yeah, also I'm enjoying the RPG vibes we're having right now. So
Oh, thank you.
loving that. That being said, you obviously mentioned Final Fantasy, but what are some of your other favorite games, both past and present, that you're enjoying?
Yeah, I'm a big RPG guy in general, so yeah, like a big reason why I did such a large feature on Knights of the Old Republic is because that's one of my favorite games as well. That kind of got me into Star Wars and Western RPGs. The Witcher 3 is high up there for me.
Nice.
Shadow of the Colossus, Majora's Mask. I like to play a bit of everything. To be
Okay.
honest, for the most part, I'm not really into like life sims, but
Okay.
or I guess some fighting games, but I'm just really not good at them. But generally, I try to play a little bit of everything, so I um, do like most things. But yeah, but definitely JRPGs. Like Clair
Nice.
Obscur right now is just incredible.
Yeah,
Uh,
I have like maybe 6 hours into that, and like I'm wishing I had it earlier because I
yeah,
have other games that I'm playing under embargo, but I really want to jump back into Expedition 33. So I totally
yeah,
get what you're saying there. I'm gonna judge you real quick with the you mentioned Majora's Mask. Is that your favorite Zelda?
yeah.
All right, this guy's my boy right here. All right, yeah, but and then
Let's go.
big RPG guy. Have you tried or heard of the Trails series?
I have heard of it. Yeah, I know of it. I haven't really dug into it, unfortunately. I do want to, not for a lack of interest. It's just, that's one of my, not to get into a huge side tangent, but just
Yeah,
games just get so long nowadays. Not necessarily blaming Trails for that, but just in
by all
general,
means, go to the tangent.
games,
Totally fine. Yeah.
yeah, games just get really long. So it's like sometimes I just go in phases where I just don't play a lot, or I just gravitate towards smaller games. Like movies are one of my big hobbies as well. So
Okay.
sometimes if I like in the last few months, I haven't played a whole lot of games because I've just been kind of burnt out from last year. So I was just watching a ton of movies. But yeah, no, I've always wanted to get more into the Trails games. I've heard a lot of good things.
Yeah.
Is that one of your favorites?
It is probably my favorite RPG series right
Okay,
now.
nice.
Final Fantasy has done a lot of things as of late that made me like not like it as much, but I really, really enjoyed 16. And we only get Dragon Quest every so often.
Sure.
My introduction to RPGs, even though I'm a huge fan of them, not counting Pokemon, was Golden Sun. So
Oh, nice. Okay.
back on the GBA, like I played as many of those SNES ports as I could. That was how I eventually got my hands on Chrono Trigger and whatever it may be. And the Trails series really brings that old school feeling back, while at the same time like respecting modern tones, while having its anime tropes, but at the same time being fully political, and that's what I'm all about. Like people really, really
Nice.
love Metaphor Fantasio, but Trails Through Daybreak, which also came out last year, had that hybrid battle system 2 years beforehand because it came out in Japan first. So
Mm.
I was like, hey, yeah, that came from this. But yeah, definitely get into Trails. They're actually remaking the first game. It's
Oh,
called
nice. Okay.
The first comes out this September, so definitely put that on your calendar. If not, I'd be more than happy to freelance a review for you. But yeah. Um, anyway, so what's your favorite game of all time?
Final Fantasy VII.
Final Fantasy Seven. Why?
For me, I mean, obviously, people always say, the first one is always your favorite, and I think that is true in a lot of cases. It definitely was my first, though. The quick side tangent: my introduction to Final Fantasy came through Kingdom Hearts, actually, because
Oh, okay.
my friend bought Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories on the GBA because kids will say the darndest things on the playground, and he
Okay,
heard
his first
someone
one.
No, he just went into Chain of Memories because he
Okay.
heard someone on the playground say Inuyasha was in it because that was his favorite anime at the time. I think he saw Riku and he thought that was Inuyasha. But anyways, so my friend played it. And then he loaned it to me afterwards. And then I was playing it. Hercules was one of my favorite Disney movies growing up. And I'm like, yo, who's this cool blonde guy fighting Hercules? And I'm like, yo, Cloud, this guy's got his own game. So anyways, my friend bought Final Fantasy VII. He played it, loaned it to me, and then I was just blown away by the storytelling in the world. And I think for me, a big thing was I really connected with Cloud as a character. I think that the whole, first of all, the unreliable narrator trope that they did there is still to this day, not really many other games have kind of tackled it like that. But for me, how I connected him, just because I kind of love how he was sort of a subversion of the sort of chosen one tough guy sort of trope where you think that, yeah, he's kind of got it all together. He's kind of the one who's going to save us all. And in the end, he was just kind of a really goofy sort of dude who was kind of just a guy from a small town who just wanted to impress a girl and become a hero to, join the army, as it were. And I really loved that whole sort of dynamic that they did there. And then just the music is still my favorite. I mean,
Oh,
all the Final Fantasy games have great music, but Seven just I have a soft spot with Seven and
yes.
the Materia system. And I wrote a whole piece about for the 25th anniversary in 2022. Square was asking people to what does Final Fantasy VII mean to you, sort of thing. And so I actually wrote a big piece on it where I articulated this in a lot better way. I'm definitely more of a writer than a speaker, but that's kind of why I love it so much. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. I don't know how you'll feel about this. I am a huge Disney fan. I am a huge Square fan. I cannot stand Kingdom Hearts. The reason being, I just feel like those Disney worlds deserve to really be explored, and Kingdom Hearts doesn't really do that because it's essentially like a fancy dungeon crawler. And I'm like, man, I wish I could really explore Agrabah or, wherever they do the Circle of Life a little more. But it is what it is there. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I have to ask, did you go to the symphony concert? Did they have one in Canada, or did you come to the States for that, or?
Yeah, they had one in Toronto actually. That's where I got the shirt, which is really cool. So that was in September, I think, which was really cool. So,
Nice.
but yeah, they're kind of hit or miss or on when they come here, if they come here. Like for instance, we were talking. I met Kimmy for the first time in January in Chicago for the Distant Worlds there because they weren't bringing the 35th anniversary one here. And then a couple months later, they announced that they are finally coming to Toronto and Soken's going to be there. I'm like, okay, I'm seeing it again in Toronto, I guess. So, which is funny. But yeah, sometimes they don't bring them here. Or my friend and I went to Boston a few months ago for the Near concert because that didn't come here. So.
Oh yeah. The last Rebirth concert in the States happened the day before GDC started. And
oh wow!
they were sold out for months, and I got in because my girlfriend bought me tickets. I don't know where or how, but she was able to do that, and I was
nice.
like, oh, this is going to be awesome. This is how I start my GDC, and that was when Kimmy saw my photo, and she was like, oh yeah, Brad went there too. I'm like, okay, I have to meet this Brad. He's awesome. So yeah, all right. So okay, you talked about your favorite game, your game series. What about games that have impacted you the most? Is it still Final Fantasy?
Yeah, definitely Final Fantasy would be one of the big ones. For me, actually, and I wrote a big piece about it too. The new God of War games especially hit me really close to home because I have an estranged father, so I haven't seen or spoken to him in many years, and the way that God of War handles the sort of nuances of fatherhood and having that sort of thorny relationship with your father and sort of him coming to terms with him being a shitty person, but ultimately trying to be better for his son. I just resonated with me so much, that game, God of War Ragnarok specifically. That game just blew me away with how well that story was told. And I wrote a piece about it, and it actually got I tweeted at the writer, the narrative lead on the game, because it's that's one thing. Social media is bad for a lot of reasons, but I like that when you use it right, you can connect with the developers and let them know that, hey, your work meant something to me, which is what I try to do, share that positivity when possible. So I tweeted them, I'm like, hey, loved your game, thank you. And then he's like, oh, thank you so much, that was awesome. And then Christopher Judge, who plays Kratos, saw his tweet of that And then, so I'm playing Neon White at the time, which was an awesome game. I don't know if you
Nice.
played it.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
way.
and I'm playing that, and then my phone starts blowing up, and it's like, oh yeah, because Christopher Judge shared my story and tweeted at me, and he's like, thank you for writing this. This is why we make the art that we do, and uh, and it was, and he had his own like daddy issues, so he kind of weighed in on that as well. But it was just such a like surreal. And then a week later, I got to actually meet him at the Game Awards and be like, oh hey, I'm the guy who wrote that. Literally right after he won his Best Performance award. So that was such a really surreal moment where it's like I already loved the game to begin with, and then that kind of made it even more special.
Nice. I have always loved the God of War series. Our review of not the first God of War, but like the first God of War on PS4. Our reviewer actually just wrote it from the perspective of like being a new father and stuff like that. So it was really cool seeing, especially knowing that Corey Barlog, he's been on this series all of his life, and he actually did this new part of the series from the dad's perspective as well. So it's cool seeing their
Hmm.
maturity just jump into the game, and that's one of the reasons why it's really so special. So yeah,
Totally.
awesome stuff. We're going to do a little bit of a transition now. We're going to move into the AAPI section of the interview. Um, do, do you have any advice to give to the AAPI in gaming community?
In terms of like breaking into the industry, or
A
what sort
little
of
bit of
advice?
both. In terms of breaking into the industry, and obviously with a lot of the shortcomings we have right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier, where I think finding your communities is really important. The ones that will support you and elevate you, and I think especially if we're talking about specific groups like AAPI, and I think like I said, like kind of going on Blue Sky or Discord and finding those groups again, like something that you guys do so well with AAPI gaming, finding fostering that sort of really positive community that people can find each other and be a part of one another, a part of one another to me, and sort of share resources and that sort of thing. Like that Discord is awesome. And again, that's a free resource to people, and yeah, I think also just looking out for games that are from API creators, I think is really cool, because those can inspire you to whether it's I show you that something's possible, if you want to do it yourself, or even just kind of you'll be inspired by the story to kind of write your own, or something like that. I come back to a Toronto developer that I did an interview with, that actually later she was actually interviewed on this show because she
Oh,
later linked it up with Kimmy, Deb Chanson,
yes.
from Sticky Brain in Toronto. She was awesome. She was telling me when I was interviewing her about like when they went to GDC, their game is Rooster, which is like based on Chinese culture and heritage. And when they were at GDC, they had a bunch of people come up to them and be like, this is amazing. I didn't know games like this could exist, or that you could make them." And that was really inspiring to them, both as the developers to hear, and then also the aspiring developers, the sort of students and other people hearing and seeing that as well. So I think that sort of thing, just seeking out those games, and kind of being inspired by them, learning by them, etc.
I know it's partly because of your beat, but obviously, like you've mentioned, specifically covering the games industry in Canada and how it affects Canada. I'm wondering if you've used the same energy to cover games that were made by AAPI creators.
Yeah, absolutely. A few years ago, I started. I haven't been able to maintain it consistently in the last year because of the layoffs, but for about 2 years, I was doing a monthly Canadian gaming series, or a monthly Canadian developer interview series, where I would, whether it was an indie developer or AAA developer or someone who's adjacent to the industry, I would interview them. And the very first one I ever did was for Venba, which is made by about an Indian mother, and set inspired by the creator's real life, set in Toronto, like he is. And I was actually, I believe, only the second person ever to write about that game. Like PC Gamer was the first one I ever saw that they interviewed him, and then I believe I was like the second one after that. And then since then, in the years since, he like blew up because of TikTok and everything, which is awesome. So I'm not claiming any credit for it, but I just mean more like I hadn't really known a whole lot about the game, and I hadn't really seen a lot about it, and I wanted to kind of cover it more and hear from that perspective. And um, so that was one that I really like to focus on. But also, last year, one of the big ones for me was 1000 Times Resist. I absolutely adored that game. That's a bunch of Asian Canadians in Vancouver. They just left. Uh, they worked in the performing arts sector, and because of COVID, that was just completely shut down. So they were able to get funding from the Canadian government because there's a lot of great funding opportunities here, and make this game that this really amazing high concept sci-fi like near level storytelling game that's very much rooted in the Asian diaspora. Like quintessentially, that's what that whole story's about, and it resonated with so many people. And yeah, so that's the sort of thing I try to look out for. It's like, oh, is there a game that is the game doing something interesting? And then also because Canada is very multicultural, I try to highlight, if there's an Indian creator or an Asian creator or a Black creator or whoever. But those were some of the like AAPI examples for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, actually, a lot of my own reviews, a lot of my main hits come from Asia, especially when I review a game like the most recent one would be Afterlove EP, which mostly took place in Jakarta. And like as soon
Right.
as
Yeah.
as soon as I reviewed that game and posted it on LinkedIn, like that was like my most popular piece on LinkedIn for a while,
That's
and
awesome.
I had people hit me up on Discord because like they saw that I shared it on the AAPI channel, and like yeah, they were sharing me all these things about happening with APAC going on with the gaming industry, and it was terrific. So yeah, I'm loving seeing representation in that way. So I guess with that we'll segue off into what does representation mean to you?
Yeah, I think representation for me kind of means like what I was talking about with Rooster, like the idea that you can see it inspires you to know that you're able to do something. There's so many things in society that whether it's overt racism or discrimination, like people telling you you can't do this, or just systematically, not supporting giving people an opportunity who aren't, just the straight white guy sort of archetype to fill these roles. And I think seeing these people from like an Asian diaspora make a game and it be successful, that's the sort of representation that's great to see. And for me, I think what's interesting as well is like I'm only half Indian, I'm half white, half Indian, so I've kind of had that perspective where a lot of the time I haven't really felt represented because we've done a great job in there's obviously room for improvement, of course, but we've done a great job in recent years of trying to push more representation, but there's still not really a lot of stories about mixed race people. And So for me, it's like, I think that's another reason partly why I loved God of War Ragnarok so much is because it's not directly about a mixed race character, but Atreus is sort of Kratos' son is he's half human, half god basically, and that's kind of he's kind of reconciling with the or half giant, sorry, half god. So he's kind of reconciling with like, oh, I'm half Kratos is Greek god mythology, but I'm also half giant, like Norse giant mythology, and that's sort of him kind of reconciling the two sides of his people, and I think that's the sort of that's for representation. That's kind of something that I really take after and really appreciate when I see something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the exact same thing, especially with Canadians in general. I remember when I was reviewing Venba. I loved Venba, by the way. Venba was definitely my indie game of the year that year. When I was writing about the story, I had like I couldn't really put it in my mind to type Indian Canadian. Like I'm so used to typing things like Chinese, Filipino American, whatever, but it was like Indian Canadian, and like that's one thing that like really resonates with me as far as it being AAPI Heritage Month. I'm someone that really wants it to be ANHPI Heritage Month because like not everybody is American, so I don't like having the double A in there because I want to recognize Asians from all over the place. And yeah, that's definitely cool that you mentioned that. So that brings me to sort of my last question about representation and like just being Asian into space. What's it like for you being Asian into space? I know you mentioned that you're half Indian and half white, but I'm wondering if that's ever affected you in any way, whether it be during your younger days or to up to now.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more of an understated thing where I've never like overtly faced racism in the sense that I've never had anyone come to my face and say anything demeaning like that. But I do think in a lot of cases you do kind of feel like an outsider in a lot of ways because it's like you don't really belong to either. And even nowadays, like we saw it last year, like with like Kamala Harris, people would kind of only, acknowledge one half or the other, where it's like, no, she's half black and half Indian, right? But some people were like, oh, she's not one or she's not the other. Or even recently, I was seeing someone celebrate that, the new Marvel movie Thunderbolts, the Ghost character from Ant-Man and the Wasp, she's in real life, she's half black and half white. And some people were trying, and someone was like, "Oh, it's really cool that there's like this black character on the Avengers now, or this new Avengers team." And people are like, "Well, she's not black, she's white." And so even now we see people kind of invalidate that lived experience, where it's like, yeah, no one's saying, she's not trying to say like she's fully black and she speaks for all black people, but that is a valuable experience, right? Where she comes from both sides, and I think that's something that I don't think a lot of people necessarily acknowledge often, or even just kind of thinking about it, like when I'm with family, it's like uh, growing up over the years, it's like, oh, I don't really look like that side of the family. I don't really look like that side of the family, and so people, I think, probably were thinking, oh, that's weird. He kind of stands out, and you kind of think, and even see people kind of stare at you sometimes, and like, it's kind of weird, it's a white family, but then you're this kind of Mexican looking dude. I get that all the time. People think I'm Hispanic, which is fine, but obviously I'm not. So that, I think, yeah, sometimes it does have a tendency to kind of make you feel like you're in a little bit of a bubble. And so, to the point of the representation, when you see something like either a mixed race character, which doesn't happen very often, sadly, or you at least see a character who comes from multiple cultures, whether that is like Atreus, or for me, like I really like the Shang-Chi movie. Even though I'm not, well, he's from Mississauga, which is just outside of Toronto, like me, Simu Liu, so that was kind of cool, that connection. But also just the idea that, he's kind of struggling between two different cultures and sides of his family and lineage. And so stuff like that, even when it's not directly race related, that side of his character, I still connect with too, because that's kind of universal, right? It's like the sort of dichotomy between your two different sides of your upbringing. And yeah, so that's kind of what is meaningful for me when I'm able to actually see it. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't see it very often. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I mean, fortunately and unfortunately, right? So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, you mentioned Shang-Chi. Like, I can't think of another situation where timing really worked out as well as it did for that one. Like, I
Mhm.
remember, like, right before that movie came out, there was a whole lot of Asian hate, especially here in the United States. People
Mhm.
attacking elderly and whatever it may be. And I was like, I'm not saying this Shang-Chi is going to end up being the next Black Panther, but this is a movie that we need to be good, and I'm thankful that it
Mhm.
was, because, yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely put a lot of respect back on the name. And, you kind of hate that it's kind of related to Kung Fu, because that's kind of been the stereotype anyway, but, it's
Sure.
definitely something that we can definitely take some pride in. But
Mhm.
anyway, I just wanted to jump back and sort of like ask questions that I had myself.
Yeah,
Um,
please.
and yeah, so um, I don't know how you personally feel about it, but I think like with people like us who primarily do like written content in the gaming industry, I don't really see a lot of people use LinkedIn as sort of a way to promote their content. And you're definitely somebody that I see doing it, but the reason why that's happening is because I was sort of introduced to you based on stuff that Kimmy has shared, and I was like, oh, this Brad guy looks really cool. I want to meet him. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that and how LinkedIn is used for just whatever you need it for.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I've really liked LinkedIn. I know a lot of people like to dunk on it, and obviously there are some kind of cringy things
Of
about
course.
it, and but I think like with any social media platform, it's all about how you use it. And yeah, for me, I think it's great because, yeah, I've connected with a lot of people on it. I mean, I think the big one for me was last year. I wrote like an editorial about the Canadian gaming industry needing more recognition, because again, it is third largest in the world, but nobody really knows that. Nobody really knows what a Canadian game is. So I kind of wrote about that, and that really blew up, especially on LinkedIn. Like I think that's still like easily the most liked, shared, commented thing I've ever written on LinkedIn, and that really got me in touch with a lot of people. And I think that sort of highlights the power of when it's used, right, of LinkedIn, where maybe you're not necessarily going to get something that goes quite as viral as that, but there are a lot of times where you'll just post something, and someone might come across it, and it's great for networking in that sense. And it is good sometimes as well to kind of escape the other social media platforms, as even Blue Sky, which obviously is more of a positive one than some of the other ones. It's still nice to kind of avoid that and go to something that obviously is at least trying to be a little more professional. And it's nice to kind of write write stuff specifically tailored to that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, like if you were to ask me 3 years ago about what my thoughts were on LinkedIn, like it would be the basic answer of it's typical professional social media. But it wasn't until like we started seeing the layoffs and whatever it may be, and like because of that, people would reach out to me because when they started, I still had my job at EA, and
Hmm.
like they were asking about stuff, and eventually that became my main platform of use. A lot of people in the industry or the working side of the industry just really wanted to talk, and that changed my newsfeed. My newsfeed is way more interesting than it was a few years ago. Back then, it would be like, all right, B2B business, whatever it may be. Now it's like,
Hmm.
okay, cool. Here is why the Switch 2 is going to be awesome, and whatever it may be. So it's really cool seeing that side of it, and at the same time, just seeing people who are both employed and unemployed work together to just find jobs. And
Hmm.
Amir Satvat really deserved his game award
Yes.
when that happened. I
Yeah.
I definitely shed a tear. I was in the building when that happened, and I was like, all right, I helped
Me
that guy
too. Yeah.
look at
Yeah.
resumes. So yeah, it's really awesome. And again, like that was the main way I found you. I also wanted to ask about how you've used it. Have you used it to you know well, I've seen you use it to share articles, but have you found that effective in any way, or has that sort of like changed your way of promoting your own stuff or stuff from your colleagues?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's great because a lot of time it's kind of like a chain reaction sort of thing where like I might share something
Hmm.
and then I'll have someone see that and then kind of DM me and like, oh hey, uh, I saw you liked this. Do you want to do this? Or I saw you wrote about that. What about this? And it's a great way to sort of show people that you're interested in this sort of thing without necessarily getting sent a million pitches because sometimes the inbox can just be
Yeah,
a disaster and
yeah,
things can get lost in there. So I think LinkedIn's kind of a nice streamlined way to sort of make those connections and get those pitches, either me to someone else or vice versa, while cutting through a lot of that. And yeah, again, just finding different people that you'll connect with. Um, One of the cool things for me last year was when I wrote that reaction piece, or response piece to the Canadian gaming industry. One of the guys who saw it is actually, and I wrote about him actually. And I got him in touch with Kimmy too, because he's
nice.
he's a fully Indian man, and he's
Okay.
based in Toronto, and he started this one man company, Kashamar Productions, where he's bringing all these concerts to Canada. Like he helped bring the Rebirth concert to Toronto, which is so I'm like a thank you because I've been begging for that for ages. But
Mhm.
that sort of thing where like he just happened to see my piece on LinkedIn. Like I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know him. And then he's like, oh, hey, love to connect with you. Do you want to like hop on a call and we can chat about stuff? And now I interviewed him. People really liked that piece. And I've covered some of his concerts and he's invited me to some of them. So that's been a really cool way to sort of branch out. And then we were trying to talk about doing some other things behind the scenes as well. So it's like and that was just one example, but there was a lot of things that kind of came about that just because I happened to share something on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think generally you have a better chance of reaching the sort of right people if you're sharing things on LinkedIn. Like, whereas it can be very hit or miss on social media. You could share something and then you'll get 10 people who are completely random just reply to it and insult you, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
at least on LinkedIn, generally you're not going to get that. So,
It's funny also, like not everything is gonna hit. Like for better or for worse, a lot of my most popular LinkedIn content was just me like complaining I didn't have a job, and I'm like, okay, this is probably isn't like shedding me in the best light, but it is what it is there. That being said, did you have any thoughts or gripes on visibility, not only on LinkedIn but with social media or promotion of your content in general?
yeah, I think with social media, LinkedIn, I haven't really had as much in the way of problems. I think people are really supportive there, especially Kimmy and AAPI Gaming shares all the stuff that I write, which again I really appreciate. And I told her when I met her, like, and I meant this sincerely. It's like there are a lot of people in this space who, if we want to get a bit real, I don't think are entirely genuine. Like a lot of the time, they sort of are nice to your face, sort of thing. But then when it comes to the work you do, they don't really support it in any way, even though they'll say to you like how many times, oh, I'd love to have you on the podcast, and then or I'll reach out after, and then nothing. You never hear anything from them, right? So it's like that's why I really appreciate real ones. Like that's why I've been so grateful for Kimmy, because she's been so supportive. And I even said to her, I'm like, you're sharing stuff I'm writing about Canadian games, and you're not even Canadian, right? Like, and there's not even like an AAPI angle sometimes either. She's just sharing it because just showing support. I'm like, I really appreciate that. I really value that. So yeah, I think that's sometimes the problem with social media is there's a lot of like fakeness with these people, and they'll want you to share something of theirs or be involved with their stuff only when it benefits them, but then otherwise they won't really do that. So that, again, that's partly why I like LinkedIn, where it's a little more real in that sense, at least with some of the people I've connected with, and also yeah, it's sometimes it is a bit tricky just getting and I think with social media as well, like if an embargo lifts on something, everyone's sort of tweeting at the same time about it, so you can just kind of get lost in there, even though maybe you wrote something really good, but everyone's tweeting about it at the same time or posting, skeeting about it, whatever the word is.
No, I mean,
and kind of.
the thing that gets me, and like I know I shouldn't be taking it personally, is like a lot of my friends or people in my network know that this is what I do, and they tell me that they enjoy it, but at the same time, like, you can share it too, man. That would totally be nice. But and it doesn't happen, and that even happens with my own staff. And at the same time, it's like especially with the example of my staff. Well, I'm not paying them, so it totally makes sense. And yeah, it's just a matter of like how people engage with things and whether it's relevant to not only what they themselves do, but whether it's relevant in general. So it's really interesting just seeing that part of it. But yeah, this is pretty much it. I don't know if you had any other thoughts that you wanted to bring up, but one thing that I definitely want to do is we want to compile a list of your articles that you want to showcase, and we'll put it on the text version of this interview, and then when we promote it, the way we promote stuff. So yeah, was there any closing thoughts you had?
Not really. I think just kind of piggybacking what I was just saying there. Thank you very much for having me. Again, it's hard sometimes to find people who are genuine and wanting to support your stuff, and that's why I really appreciate it. You guys do amazing stuff. First of all, just for AAPI communities in general, but also just letting me come on and talk and having other people like me on the platform, and that's really appreciated. I know they would appreciate it too. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Again, like this was an interview I was glad to take on. This was actually my first project with a team, so I'm glad
awesome.
it was somebody that I've always wanted to meet since I like saw your content, and I was like, cool, let's make this work. And you said you're going to Summer Game Fest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's shake hands there, and
Yeah, let's link up. Yeah, absolutely.
I have a full schedule, but we'll make it work. So
We'll find it. We'll figure it out. Yeah.
exactly. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.